Hi, this is the first in a series of assertiveness videos. The ideas in this series largely come from a book called When I Say No, I Feel Guilty by Dr. Emmanuel Smith. I hope to do justice to the ideas in this book, but I also highly recommend getting a copy and reading it if you can. There are 5 major assertiveness techniques covered in the book. These include broken record, fogging, negative assertion, negative inquiry, and self-disclosure. You can also think of this list as a spectrum from top to bottom. At the top we have techniques that are better for dealing with strangers. Towards the bottom of the list we get more into techniques that are best for loved ones, close friends, family members. Broken record is simply the strategy of repeating your demands over and over again. This is the first technique because it's the easiest to remember. Many of us were taught this in DARE classes. If you're from the United States, DARE, the Drug Awareness Resistance Education, like the very first thing they teach you is to repeat no over and over again. Obviously, this is a very blunt instrument, okay? A lot of times this is not going to work, but it's a good place to start and build practice. Fogging is a technique for dealing with criticism or insult by simply agreeing with what the other person is saying about you. This can be very difficult because basically it's saying to turn the other cheek. Now, there's 3 strategies for making this a little bit more palatable. The first is to agree with the truth. Perhaps someone is calling you stupid and you did a stupid thing. You can say, hey, I admit I made a mistake. An example of agreeing with the odds is saying something to the effect of, that's probably true, or you're probably right. An example of agreeing in principle is saying something to the effect of, we all make mistakes from time to time. The name fogging comes from the idea that you can't hurt the fog. I like to think of fogging as a kind of Aikido technique. You use your opponent's momentum against them and eventually tire them out. Fogging can be a great way to frustrate someone who's being emotionally abusive. But more than that, it's a great way to receive criticism, even constructive criticism, from a boss or a parent. Negative assertion is very similar to fogging, but in this we take a more proactive approach and we readily admit our error. Negative assertion signals to others that we recognize our own flaws and we're okay with the flaws we see in ourselves. Negative inquiry is simply the technique of asking the person who is making criticism of you, well, what is bad about what I did? What is bad about me doing X? This will not only help you understand where the other person is coming from, but will force them to examine their own beliefs about what they're perceiving as wrong. This is a great technique to use with friends and family members because it very naturally leads into potential for discussing compromises. The last technique is self-disclosure. This is simply a fancy name for saying how you feel. Self-disclosure is important because it helps the other person understand your perspective. It helps them understand why you're doing what you're doing and why you're saying what you're saying. Again, this technique is particularly important with friends and family members because with them you're not just trying to get your way, you're trying to develop an ongoing relationship. Thanks for listening. I'm going to move on to some example dialogues. I hope those will be even more informative than this has been as we see how to put these techniques into practice.